Welcome to the Grow with Joe podcast, the podcast about financial planning for wine and spirits professionals, featuring your host, Joseph Stevens, certified financial planner. All right, we're back, and today we have Joe Stevens. Joe is a financial advisor based in Point Pleasant, New Jersey, and Joe has a really interesting story because he did my favorite thing, which is niche down. So, Joe, could you just give us some background about who you are, what your business is, and how you got into this position?
Yeah, you bet, Ryan. Thanks again for having me on today. So my name is Joe Stevens. I'm a certified financial planner. My office is based in Spring Lake, so Monmouth County, New Jersey. But I have a pretty unique background and I guess, interesting story. So I grew up in wine and spirits. My dad owned a couple retail liquor stores at the Jersey Shore. So I grew up working there, wearing a ton of hats, everything from stocking shelves to running payroll. Um, and, always kind of, I guess learning from my father, how to run a business, how to take care of people, and this customer service element that we always prided ourselves on that I think kind of carries through with me today. Because when you work retail, you're just dealing with people all day, every day. When we got out of the retail business, I ended up joining the Gallo family and became the luxury manager for the state of New Jersey for Gallo Winery. Became a certified sommelier, and always had this passion for wine, and learning as well. So. After a couple of years at Gallo, I decided that I wanted to work for myself. And I always had this passion for people. And so I started my financial services career at Allstate on the financial services side, as a financial planner, and begun my journey there. And then, realized that I really wanted to be independent. And then, last year I joined a buddy that I grew up with in Point Pleasant, and our practice is called Associated Financial Planners. But I focus on helping wine and spirits sales professionals, either on the distributor side or supplier side, because that is my real passion, and they're my people. I've grown up around a lot of these folks, seeing how hard they work, seeing their work ethic, their motivations, their pain points, and I've been around that since I was 8 years old, basically, and it's kind of led me to where I am today, and it's the reason that I think I'm able to serve them as well as I am.
So you said that you ran or you helped run the family wine shop, and then you went to Gallo, which I think, are they a distributor? Because I've seen their bottles in the stores.
Yep.
But are they a winery or a distributor? There's a lot of different players in the industry.
Yeah, great point. So Gallo is unique in that in New Jersey, and I think maybe a couple other states, but they are the supplier and the distributor. Yeah, so they make the products and they distribute them to the retail tier. So they cover two tiers in New Jersey. So that's a unique thing, because
And you worked on the distributor side for them?
I did work on the distributor side, although it really is like tangential to tangent. Is that the right way to say that? to
I know what you
the
mean.
to the supplier, you're really working arm in arm, because everything kind of comes down from the supplier, and because the supplier technically owns the distributor, it was a really unique relationship in that I kind of got to see both sides. So, which was cool, because if you just work for a distributor, you're kind of only seeing, that side of the business, and the supplier is a little different too. So this was unique. And I think it gave me some really interesting perspective on how it all kind of pieces together.
One, so you said that you kind of focus on the wine and spirits distributors or wine and spirits professionals. Are there any specific or like unique challenges that, I mean, you have experience doing this, right? From both perspectives, both helping these guys, but also you were one, and that you were a distributor. Like, what are the unique challenges that you remember or that you now work with, um, dealing with clients?
Yeah, so there's a lot of factors here. Primarily, I'll kind of go through, I guess, maybe top five, top six. Variable income. So a lot of folks, either at the distributor or the supplier level, have variable income and a variable, really the bonus, right? So they might have a W-2 type of salary component, or they might just be all commission. That really depends on, the size of the company. Apollo was, a very large organization. So they had a 401k plan in place. But, if you're union, like, some of the sales reps in these distributors are union employees. So they have a whole different set of rules than non-union employees too. So it's a complex industry, but I guess primarily it's that variable income and it's the bonus piece to it, especially if you work at a supplier, or you're like an area manager for a distributor. Um, how do you plan for that bonus before it hits, and actually have something, and not necessarily written out, but at least in your mind, how am I going to cover the tax portion of this? How am I going to fund, the next chapter? How am I going to break this bonus up so I'm ready for it? Okay. So that's primary, is that variable income. Secondarily, it's this, if you do have a 401k plan, or not, really doesn't matter, but it's this tax diversification component that I see so often where, if you do have any type of retirement savings, a lot of it is, in these pre-tax accounts, like a 401k, for example, where, that becomes this ticking time bomb that, down the road you're going to be forced to take money out of it and stack that on top of social security and anything else. And now you're dealing with some tax consequences that you weren't prepared for. So I see a lot of folks with a lot of pre-tax money saved for retirement, and they don't have any of that diversification, either in, just a regular brokerage account, or the Roth side of their 401k. And then, the third thing that I really come across often, is how to deal with taxes, right? Like, how do we plan for it? How do we solve some of these tax issues when we're just W-2? What else can we do, to maybe have some type of side gig where we have some 1099 income, and we can use that as some, there's some deductible expenses if we have that. And then the fourth thing is estate planning. This is a topic that I think just worries people, and they're afraid to stare it in the face, and they don't want to confront it, so they just avoid it. But it's a common theme that I've seen with a lot of folks that I work with, where they have nothing in place, and especially, in a litigious society, you need to have, the will, power of attorney, healthcare directives. You need those three documents in place. And I just see those missing so often. And then lastly is disability insurance. So, this is something that, so again, there's so much complexity to these tiers. So depending on how large of a distributor you work at, or, if you're working for a startup tequila company, you may or may not have group benefits in place. This is something that needs to be discussed and examined and looked at. So, I'm sharing a little bit of the secret sauce, but that's the top five that I see often.
Um, Hold on, I need to make myself again. There we go. Um, I'm thinking, like, how did you learn all this? But I know a little bit about you, and I know you got a lot of credentials, but one of them is specifically applicable to this, right? You do have a SOM, which is helpful, just like understanding the wine world a little bit, but also you got the CFP, right? What was that like? As in, like, how grueling was that test? I've taken some tough tests, but my God, I gotta imagine this one's really hard.
Yeah, it's a lot. Definitely the hardest test I've ever taken. I'll just,
Harder than getting a notary?
yeah, I'd say. No, you know what? It's one of those tests where it's so wide that you don't even know where to start your focus on. So I lean on a lot of exam prep providers. I'll give a shout out to Brett Danko. Brett does an incredible job with getting you to focus on the things that you need to get right on that exam. But it is a grueling exam. And it came at a tough point in my career where, I was like, geez, am I stepping away from my practice to put all this time and effort into this exam? But looking back, it was the best thing I could ever did because it really, it gives you this level of confidence and knowledge, obviously, confidence that I never had before. And just reinforcing like things that I already knew, but man, like when you pass that exam, it really just you can kind of sit there and just feel really good about where you're at. Well worth it, but man, it's a bear. It's a bear.
So how do the things that you learned in that apply to what you're doing on like a daily basis?
So I would say that exam and the knowledge leading up to it really gives you the foundation for all these cogs in the wheel, right? Because financial planning is such a, does anybody really know what that term means, right? It's really realistically, it's about how do your investments fit in with your estate planning, fit in with your tax plan, fit in with your risk management. How do all these things fit together and how do they apply to you, Ryan? Okay? Because it's personal, right? That's why they call it personal financial planning, but it's really, our job, and that's the job, right? The job is to figure out what matters to Ryan and, how can he accomplish his goals in the most efficient means possible, and how do we create this guide that's going to get him there without all the complexity, like the complexities are on me. So how do we break that down for you, simplify, get you organized, and then be this, quote unquote coach that ensures that you actually implement these things, to achieve your priorities. Goals is such a worn out word, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to kind of shift to how you've been approaching, or if we know why you decided on this market of wine and spirits distributors, but how would you say that kind of focusing on that niche has kind of helped you as you develop business? Because I know you have a LinkedIn profile and you're working with that, and people are coming in and saying, "Hey, you're the guy," How has that affected kind of your persona in the market and how leads are coming in?
Yeah, great point. So having that focus has allowed me to constantly think about ways I can share pain points that I see often in my meetings. And I think with all marketing, there needs to be an educational component, but there also needs this they need to see like who you really are, right? That personal side of you too. And I am passionate about wine and spirits and the whole industry. I've been, it provided my parents a really good life. My grandfather, geez, we've been in it for 70 years, So, and I think, in my marketing, I try to convey that because it's real, I mean, there's nothing There's nothing fake here. I live, and I still live and breathe it every day. And I'm still really connected to, so many folks in it. And there's a lot of headwinds right now, in the industry, which I think, we've been, that industry's seen tough times before, 2008, right? Housing crisis, recession. I can remember, my dad and I sitting there like, geez, are people ever going to buy $50 bottles of wine again? Or do we just stop that whole section, and look, right. Things came back and stronger than ever for a long time. And I think premium wine and spirits, will continue to have their place. But there are a lot of headwinds right now. So ultimately, to get back to your question, my marketing is I try to make it educational and personal, and just be me. I mean, I think that's the most important thing here is like just be you, be yourself, show people who you really are, what you care about, and that'll resonate with your audience, if you're just a real human being.
When they reach out to you and say, "Hey, I want to work with you," right? Because they've done that a few times. What else do they say?
Um, so this is actually pretty cool. So because I'm fairly new to this social media world, so a lot of them have been saying like, hey, I feel like I already know you, and I think that comes back to the power of video, but also just the power of telling things in your own voice and being real, right? Because people were reaching out saying like, hey, I feel like I already know you, but you also said XYZ and that hit home. And meanwhile, like in my mind, I'm like, geez, you didn't engage on my stuff, but that doesn't matter. I think, and that's the power of consistency and just keep putting yourself out there. And, the magic is in the work. I believe that, right? I used to say that at Gallo all the time to the sales reps. I'd say like, hey, we got to keep going back, making sure the account looks good, making sure the shelf talkers are in the right spots, and update your scores because they matter. And it's all those little things like, keep doing the reps, right? Because the reps will, quietly behind the scenes build up to that moment where everybody's like, oh, Joe made it, and it's like, I just did a lot of work, so it's the work. But it's the truth, right? So, but anyway, I think I think that's what's been pretty fascinating is just kind of when someone reaches out and they're like, yeah, you talked about, how to manage this bonus, and I never thought about the tax side of it, or whatever. And meanwhile, you didn't even you don't you didn't even know that they were following you. So that's what's
Hmm.
pretty neat about social media is how you can reach people in such a large volume. So
Yeah,
it's pretty
and I
cool,
think you're
especially.
right. Yeah, this is the thing. Two things, right? You're if you could target, speak to one specific type of person, right? I
Yeah,
think when you say, "Oh, I work with high net worth individuals," well, that's like a million people, right? Or however many it is these days because of inflation. But like, if you can say only this specific subset, right? Even if it's like 5,000 people, that's still a lot because if you had 5,000 new clients, what would you do?
right,
Right, even 100
right.
new clients. That sounds like a lot, right? It would be a great day, but like now you got to probably hire more people, right?
Yeah,
But if you can speak to that group, they'll be like, "Oh, that resonates with me more because I understand the challenges," right? And you have the background, so you understand what their challenges are, which gives you a huge leg up. But I also think that putting that stuff out makes you a magnet for that
yeah,
because they're like, "Oh, Joe's the guy.
yeah,
He's the wine guy, He's the wine and
yeah,
spirits guy." We can it makes the conversation so much easier because rapport is it's already established,
yeah.
and they see you
Exactly.
online. They're like, "Oh, I feel like I know you."
Yeah,
It's a great phrase.
it's magical. It really is. Because trust is everything in what I do, I
Hmm.
mean, this is people's life work, and trust takes a long time to build, and it goes away very quickly. So,
Mm,
and that's why, in everything I try to do, I try to just be real, and this is who I am, and I think and I think it resonates. So, yeah,
makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
I want to do three quick questions for you.
okay,
These are the rapid fire round. That's what they call
okay.
it. The first one is, well, it's about wine. Do you have a favorite varietal right now?
So, I've always been, since I grew up in retail, and the Somm community probably wouldn't love this answer, but I'm always looking for value. I love Argentinian Malbec. Been a fan for a long time. There's some continues to be some great value in Argentina. A lot of South American regions are underrated, but yeah, I'd say Argentinian Malbecs. Yep.
Okay. What's a business book you read recently that you're like, this is this is great, and what was the takeaway from it?
Um. So I'm guilty here. I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Okay. Or
Um,
media, yeah.
yeah. So I listened to a podcast with Michael Kitz's, and he had a gentleman on there named Derek Kinney, and in fact, I've kind of really started consuming a lot of his stuff because it really resonates in just trying to simplify your message. Because I think sometimes as CFPs, we try to overcomplicate things, and realistically our message needs to be simple. It's you know how do we give someone organization and clarity in their goals, and take these really really complex subjects and break it down so they understand how it all works. And I think, like, my takeaway from this one episode was like, the word it's the words that matter, and you really 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 have to use your words very carefully.
Hmm. That's a good takeaway. Maybe we'll link to it if you can give me the link later on.
Yeah, sounds good.
Third question is, what are you looking forward to in the next year from now? Like in your business, in your life, what do you want to grow? What are you looking forward to really improving on?
Yeah, I love it. So I'm in the running for a couple speaking opportunities, and I'm a huge fan of public speaking. I love being in front of a room. There's just this energy that you cannot replicate, unless you're there live. And so I'm hoping a couple of them land, and I could share some ideas and reach a larger audience. And I think that would be really fun. And I'm excited about that because I think it's pretty cool. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. Also that article, isn't it coming out in June?
Yeah, so I did. I wrote an article for the Somm Journal, which is a great publication for the community. They also published the tasting panel, and a couple other things. But yeah, I have an article in the June issue of the Somm Journal. So check it out.
Hmm.
I'll
So
share
if
it.
somebody wants
Share it.
to reach out to you and learn more about what you, maybe they're a wine distributor and they are like, I think I need some help with this. How do
Yeah.
they get in touch?
So my LinkedIn page, you can go on my LinkedIn page and book a time to speak with me. You could also go to our website, afplanners.com. That's applefrankplanners.com. You'll see the team site on there, and that'll link to my page, growwithjoe.wine.
Nice. Love it. Joe
Yeah.
Stevens, thanks so much, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, Ryan. Appreciate it.